Hey, good morning, everybody. Crafting Journey here, that Journey Chick on Instagram, and on my second YouTube channel, The Leftovers. That's my resale channel. So check that out if you get a chance. So today, I'm continuing to work on the camper. Let me show you it's going to maybe someday look like this. I can tell you already, this little tiny table that's right there. Here it is. Oh my God. I struggled with this for a while. I'm not even going to tell you how long. And it won't stand because one of the legs is too short. So maybe, wait a minute, hold on. Maybe I can bend it a little. Let's bend it. It should be fine. Wait a minute, hold on. Oh, there we go. It's a lopsided table. Oh, and I got to put all this stuff on it. Oh, now how is that going to work? Now let's see. Maybe, oh dear. Oh dear. My goodness. Okay. All right. Well, we'll figure that out later. I struggled. Here's like part of a chair, like the bottom part of a. God, guys, can you guys even see that? Look how little it is. Okay. Yeah. So that one is actually going to stand up. I have to put. Oh goodness. I don't need the light pad on. I have to put the back to the chair on there. I don't know if I'm in love with this craft yet or not. I really don't know. I'm on the fence because, yeah. So I've already discovered the glue it's not going to glue my fingers together. It's not that kind of glue. It's not like E6000 or something, but it dries quickly and it peels off your hand. So people were like, use the glue generously. So I was using the glue generously. So it looks like a table with a bunch of glue underneath of it. So whatever. So today I'm going to work. So I did the table, the chair. I still got to put the back of the chair onto the chair. Ooh, that's going to be interesting. And then I'm going to start the cabinet, which is I've already got all the pieces to the cabinet. They're right here, all these little pieces, and we got to start gluing it together. Oh my. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay. So I'm just trying to see if everything's cut out. It looks like it is. Yeah. So that, oh, this is going to be fun. All these little pieces. Somebody said it's very tedious, but when you get done and you see the whole thing finished, you'll be like, oh, I don't know. And then they're trying to talk me into doing like this huge mansion thing. I'm like, I don't know. I think I may get this camper done, and then that is going to be it. Anyway, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you guys came back. Thank you for all my new subscribers. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Please make sure you hit the like button, though, so you show YouTube that you enjoyed the content. Yeah, that lets YouTube know. Also me. And the notification bell, because you never know when I'm going to have another episode of Crafting and Crime Daily. I try to get it up around noon every day, barring any unforeseen circumstances. I don't even know what time it is now, because I think I slept till 9 o'clock this morning. Oh yeah, it feels good to be fun employed. Except I have no money. Fun employed with no money. Okay, anyway, that's another story. Okay, so just some quick updates, and then what I'm going to focus on today is the Nicholas Cruz sentencing trial. We'll get to that in a minute, but that's going to be like the focus of today's shows because it is over. It is done with. They put a bow on it. He's off to prison. Let's talk about the Wagner case. Angela Wagner continued to testify against her son, George. Well, not really against him. She testified. Clearly, she loves her children very, very much. George Wagner is on trial for the murder of 8 members of the Rodin family. There was a dispute over custody of Sophia, 2-year-old, who was the child of Jake Wagner, George's brother, and Hannah Mae Rodin. So the Wagner family seriously believed that Sophia was being either being sexually assaulted or was going to be sexually assaulted. In order to save her from that, the father, Billy, who his trial is set for later next year, said, we've got to murder all of the rodents. Can't just murder one of them. You got to murder them all, because if you don't murder them all, one of them's going to come after you. Whoever survives, they're going to come after us. So they plan, and then they execute these murders. Angela pled guilty. She is serving a 30-year sentence. Jake, George's brother, pled guilty. He is serving 8 life sentences. And like I said, Billy's trial is next year, the father. George is on trial now. So Angela comes in. She's in the shekels and the jail outfit, and she's testifying. This is day 2 of her testimony. She says that she never got any details of the murder. Yeah. They came back from doing this murder and never discussed it with her. Interesting. The family that was so close, no one discussed it with her? I find that hard to believe. I mean, they planned everything together. They commingled their money. They had family meetings, and really, to the point where she testified about the mental status of both her sons. They all lived together. Well, I think at the time of the murders, the father was living with his mother. I don't know why he wasn't living there, but they still acted as a family unit. So she said that Jake was starting to have trouble concentrating and attention issues, and that George was having sleeping problems and nightmares. Now, I have an adult son, and I cannot tell you if he's having sleeping problems or not. I mean, we're close, but not that close. Maybe if we lived in the same house, I would know that. I don't know. Okay. So, to wrap all that up, Angela says, she wished she hadn't involved the boys. She wished that it had just been her and her husband, and that they had never involved her 2 sons, because she's always trying to protect her 2 sons. So it's a shame. And she said the reason she pled guilty is because she still wants to see her grandkids and her kids. And truth be told, she'll probably get out of jail someday. It's not going to be for a long time, but one of these days, she's going to get out of jail. So then we have the trial of Dean Cummings. Now, I actually had an opportunity to listen to the opening statements of the defense and the prosecution. Prosecution, very short, very, very short opening. No dispute that between any of the parties that Dean Cummings, the extreme skier, killed Guillermo Arellano back in February of 2020. But the jury has to decide if it was self-defense. Now, the only person that's going to be able to tell us that is Dean Cummings, the defendant, because there's nobody else to, there's no witnesses to this. This occurred out on this farm in the middle of nowhere. The 2 men, Dean and Guillermo, Mr. Arellano, were negotiating a real estate deal. Arellano owned this large property. He was in the process of negotiating this deal with Dean. He invited Dean to come live on the property. Dean Cummings moved his RV out to the property and was living there while they negotiated this real estate deal. Dean was taking care of the horses. Ariel thought it was a good idea for him to learn how to run the land, I guess. I don't know. Dean's an outdoorsman. I don't think he needed much help. He's, he likes to kayak. He's obviously, an extreme skier. But if you see pictures of Mr. Cummings from before this trial, he looks like an extreme skier. He's got the long hair, the blonde. I mean, like the bad boy kind of look. And now in court, he looks old. His hair's short. He's kind of balding. He's got a suit on. He looks like, he's got a dad bod. Doesn't look like an extreme skier. Doesn't look anything like the guy that we saw from in the pictures before when he was an extreme skier. Anyway, so this, according to the defense, which her opening was just a little bit longer than the prosecution's, both of them, none of them went even 30 minutes. So the defense gets up and she says that there was, he was in his RV, Ariello comes over, and they're struggling over this. Ariello had a canister in his hand, and they're struggling over this canister, and the struggle goes down the hallway, and they're towards the bedroom of Dean. Anyway, he just happens to have an AR-15 rifle propped up against the wall. He grabs the rifle. Now they're struggling over the rifle, and then somehow Dean claims he got sprayed by what was in the canister. Now, I'm trying to figure out how Guillermo is trying to fend off Dean, struggle over a rifle, and spray a canister. Like, you only have two hands. Like, how are you doing this? How is he spraying you, struggling over the, I don't get it. But in any case, the gun goes off. It sprays bullets in different directions. It went off at least 3 times, going down at one point twice into the floor because the gun was turned upside down. And then twice more it strikes Guillermo. Apparently the medical examiner's going to come on and testify that from, it enters his head and goes out through his chest twice. Yeah. So the defense has hired an expert witness who's going to come in and who has recreated the scene. And he's going to come in and testify that this is all consistent with a struggle and self-defense. Okay. Now, then she talked about the other charges, the concealment of his identity. She says he never concealed his identity. He called 911. He said, this is Dean Cummings. And he said, I just shot somebody in self-defense. Then the clothing, she said, of course, he took the clothing off because he got sprayed with this toxic chemical. He washed his face, washed his hands, took his clothes off, and then put them in the back of his truck. And when the police got there, he told them, my clothing is in the back of this truck. Please test it for this chemical. There you go. That's the tampering with evidence. So, I don't know. All right. So that's Dean Cummings. That's the opening statements. I'll try to watch more of the trial and get you updated on what's going on. I think it's going to be a quick trial. I'm curious to see if Dean is actually going to take the witness stand. I think in this kind of a case, you kind of have to because, it's your word against your word. I don't know. And the jury will have to assess his credibility. Now, we know, I don't know if the jury is ever going to know, how schizophrenic Dean was at the time. And another interesting fact that came out during the openings is that the medical examiner is going to come in and testify that Ariello, at the time of this struggle, was intoxicated. He'd been drinking alcohol. He had cocaine in his body and marijuana. So the medical examiner is going to testify about the effects that has on someone's body. Alcohol, cocaine, and marijuana. So, interesting. Okay. Now, let's talk about the Parkland shooting. So, Nicholas Cruz, on February 14th of 2017, or was it 2018? I don't remember. Anyway, he plans for months in advance, gets himself a rifle. His mother had passed away several months before this, his adopted mother. He plans and he carries out this school shooting. He goes into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, which is in Broward County, Florida. it's in a city, this little subdivision called Parkland. And Parkland is, I've lived in Broward County, I've practiced law there. It's a very affluent neighborhood. Not that that makes any difference, but the shooter was from this neighborhood. Like, he grew up in an affluent home. He had every advantage that you can get. He had tons of access to mental health care, and they did avail themselves of the mental health care. His mother tried to get him, counseling for years and years and years. He was, as the defense pointed out, a fetal alcohol baby. His mother ingested alcohol and cocaine during her pregnancy, and he was suffering from this fetal alcohol syndrome, which affects the brain. Okay, and moving on. So he shoots and kills 17 people and injures many, many more. There's over 70 counts that he was charged with. Now, pretty much very close in time, he pleads guilty to everything. So they set the trial for the sentencing, and that's what just occurred. So the trial was to determine whether he got life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. So the jury heard everything. They did a jury view. They actually went to the school, saw the crime scene that had been preserved for years, so the jury could see this. Families sat in this courtroom day after day after day, listening to this, listening to gunfire, watching their children be killed, looking at autopsy photos. I just can't even imagine how incredibly difficult it was for these people to sit through that. And they did. And then the jury came back and said, no death penalty, life in prison. Well, let me tell you, there were some upset people. These parents were pissed that, if he didn't get the death penalty, who would get the death penalty? Because in Florida, it has to be unanimous, and it wasn't unanimous. There were a few jurors that just felt, no, we're not going to vote for the death penalty. So, in any case, they bought what the defense was selling, that this was a brain damaged kid. But he knew right from wrong. He did. There's no doubt about that. He worked. He held a job for months at the Dollar Tree and was able to conform himself to the rules of a job. So, in any case, what occurred over the last couple of days was the actual sentencing hearing, where the families would get to come in and make their victim impact statements. And pretty quickly it got a little heated. The parents were being very vocal about how unhappy they were with the defense team, the attorneys, for making arguments about, how dare you blame this on his mental health, and how, just brutally attacking the defense. I'm not going to lie. And to the point where the public defender, the lead public defender in the case, she objected. They went sidebar. She comes back from the sidebar. She puts her objection on the record. And then she continues to talk about how, I told the prosecution that they should not come in here and attack me and attack our children. What happened was one parent, a gentleman, got up and he spoke, and I'm not sure what it was he said about the defense counsel's children, but it was a very brief reference, and he was not threatening in any way. But they just feel like the defense, yes, he has a right to a defense, but for you to passionately argue that this was brain damage, and you hire all these experts, and it's just an insult to the family. So she puts all this on the record that, they're only supposed to come in and speak to the defendant. They're not supposed to be, defaming the defense team and, threatening us and threatening our children. And then finally, the judge says, sit down. You have made your objection. Stop talking. So she shuts up. So then I presume what happens is they have a break at some point. She apparently runs to her boss, the chief public defender. He comes back to the courtroom and he appears on camera and he's telling the judge, they shouldn't be doing this and da da da. And the judge just lit into him. I mean, she just said, you need to stop talking. You need to go sit down. And this is the chief public defender. She's saying this to. And then one of the other defense team members gets up and he starts talking. So I'm going to show you a clip of her throwing him out of the courtroom. Here it is.
Judge, I can assure you that if they were talking about your children, you would definitely notice it.
You need to sit down right now. You're out of line. In fact, you're excused. You need to go sit in the back with your chief public defender.
He's the public defender, Judge.
Mr. Weeks, please ask the lawyer from your office to go sit down and not say anything else. To try to threaten my children and bring up my children is inappropriate. Go to the back of the room now. That just violated about every rule of professional responsibility that I have never. If you're going to get up here and you're going to...
Judge, I asked you to go sidebar on this matter.
You, sidebar or not, you don't have one of your assistant public defenders say something about my children?
Judge, that same venom that the court is expressing is the same venom that defense counsel had to sit through this entire morning when their children...
She brought up her children multiple times during the trial. Nobody knows if I'm barren or not. They don't know about my children.
Judge.
Sit down. Sit down.
Judge.
Sit down, Mr. Weeks.
Please do not summarily dismiss me.
I'm summarily dismissing you. Go sit down.
She was pissed, man. She was pissed. So, and she wasn't going to stop it. At no time did she stop any of these parents because they continued. This just lit the fire, man. They were, whatever speech they had prepared, they added the defense in with it for the next day and a half. These parents just lit into the defense team. And you could see that lead defense attorney, the female, she was angry. She was, the entire time they're talking to her, she's got this sourpuss, look on her face. Now, as for the defendant, no emotion. None whatsoever. I don't know how these people do that. How do they just sit there so stoically? Like, when people are like pointing their fingers and, I don't calling him a monster, calling him a bastard, and he's just sitting there. No tears, no remorse, nothing from this guy, nothing. It was crazy. So after this is all said and done, the judge had some remarks for the families. Here is just prior to her actual sentencing. Here's what she says to the families.
Before I impose the sentence in this case, I want to thank the family members for the privilege of learning about each and every one of your loved ones. I can tell you that they will not be forgotten, and I feel that I know each and every one of them by the personal stories that you have given. By way of example, Mr. Beagle, I remember as the witty teacher with the dry sense of humor, Luke Hoyer as the unexpected baby that came but was so welcomed by his mom and dad. And these are just two that I'm remembering off the top of my head, you all have been so strong and patient and graceful throughout this process. And I can't help but think of how I would behave or respond if I were in your shoes. And the way that you have grieved so gracefully and have shown extraordinary restraint throughout this process is something that I've never seen. And as a group of people, you are so strong and so united that if anything good came out of this event, I feel seeing you, I can know that you are all going to be okay because you have each other. I know that that doesn't help at all. And if I could take your pain away or carry your pain for you just for 5 minutes so that you could breathe, I would. Because I can't even imagine what you go through each day. You are a wonderful, strong community. And I also want to tell you that when I visited that school, I expected tragedy and sadness, which is present. However, that school is still thriving, and it's a beautiful campus, and it's not broken like one would expect. And I think that that is due to the strength of you all and your community. And I think that when people remember that school, they're going to remember the strength of the community and how, I mean, every one of these kids came up here, the survivors, and testified as to the schools that they're attending and how well they're doing. It speaks volumes to you all as families, and the care and the love that you provide your children. And I couldn't help but notice when the survivors came in and testified that their family units came with them and were there for them. And I can't think of any other instance in one community where so many children would have not one, not two, but a group of loving family members to support them. And that's how I will always think of MSD. Just as a great school that will survive, like you all have. So many of you thanked me. I want to thank you because you were ordered so that we could have a fair and clean trial. You were ordered not to have emotional reactions, to show restraint that I don't believe. I think I would be like Mr. Oliver, and I would have to be in my office because I don't believe I would be able to show the restraint that you all showed, and I thank you for that.
Now, when she completes these remarks, she goes on to go through every single count and sentence him on every single count. So he got 17 counts of life in prison without the possibility of parole. She also made it very clear under the Son of Sam law that he is not allowed to profit in any way from these murders. In fact, she said that his commissary account would be all of the costs of the trial, all of the costs of security from the sheriff's office, all of the cost of housing him would come out of his commissary. That man is never going to have shampoo and deodorant and toothpaste ever. I don't know if that's legal, if she can do that, but that's what she did. Anyway, no toothpaste for you ever. Because he's got to pay back every single the cost of the expert, the cost of defense. Oh my God, that's going to be outrageous, all that money. And you're not allowed to use your commissary money until you pay it back. That's how that ended. Though it actually ended where she remanded him into the custody of the Department of Corrections. So like 5 police officers, he stands up and they all escort him out of the courtroom. And I think they're going to throw away the key on that one. Yep. Okay. Wow. What an ending to that. Actually, the cameras kept rolling in the courtroom after the session ended, and the judge gets up and she's hugging the prosecution team. I thought that was inappropriate. I don't know if she knew the cameras were rolling, but she did it. And then the families, they showed the families all, hugging each other, and they're very supportive of each other, it's a good thing, as she pointed out. But for her to get off the bench and go down and hug the prosecution team, I think at one time she even offered the bailiff a hug. It was weird. Anyway, all right, that is that. Let's find out what happened this day in history, shall we? On this day in history in 2014, One World Trade Center opens to the public. Now, this was the building that actually replaced the Twin Towers. There was an architect initially hired. He came up with a design that was later modified. But there was a lot of, it took 10 years to build this thing. A lot of input as to the construction of this building. The police wanted the bottom part of the structure to be completely enclosed so there could be impenetrable by truck bombs. And then the original plan was to mimic the Statue of Liberty, and then it was remodeled into the design that you see today, which is kind of a tapered structure that moves up and goes back into a rectangle, topped off by this 1,776 foot steeple tower on the top of that. And it doesn't all take place, it doesn't get finished until 2014. And this is the day in history that it opened. Now, Condé Nast is the, like a major holder of offices in this building. They have like floors 20 through 44. And they tried to bring in a lot of more diversity into the building. They've got a lot of financial institutions, media outlets. So there's a lot of stuff in this tower, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. So that's what's there now to replace the Twin Towers that came down in 2001, 9/11. Yeah. We all remember that. Okay. So that is the show for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the content. Don't forget, hit that like button. I will see you tonight if you would like to join me at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. I'm going to be playing Disney's Dreamlight Valley. I stream the game. It's just for fun. If you want to come, take a look. You're welcome to. If not, I will see you tomorrow in Crime Daily, the Friday edition, where I do a Friday dance. So you don't want to miss that. All right, take care, everybody.